Hey everybody, this is Marian Cowagowan.
And this is David Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, the podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and TV that they loved before the first date. And today, I was made to watch UHF.
Yeah, UHF.
I feel like there's going to need to be a lot of translation here. There's some concepts that are just gone.
This is a tough movie to go to watch if you didn't live through so many of the things that this movie is referencing.
Yes.
And this is something we'll talk about as we go, but I think this is a very specific type of parody movie that is extremely of its time and place.
Yes, I feel like there's like a 2 or 3 year period after this came out when you get all the jokes, and after that,
and if you were born after this, if you weren't old enough to at least be sort of aware of most of the 1980s, many of these jokes will not land at all.
I'm sure half of them went over my head because I was 12 when this came out, and so I get a lot of it, but others I'm sure I didn't even.
I bet you got most of them.
Maybe.
But UHF is, of course, the 1989 Weird Al movie in which someone decided, I guess comedians were getting movies, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and someone just decided, hey, let's give this guy some money and see what he'll do. And it was directed by Jay Levy, who's done some stuff. Nothing's coming to mind right now for whatever reason. He's
done some stuff. I don't know what. But
he's done some comedic directing. I meant to look him up before I started, but I forgot. Okay. But he also Al and Jay Levy penned the screenplay and convinced somebody at Orion to give them enough money to make this movie.
I got to say, this is not a bad way to set something up if you're like, we basically want to do a whole bunch of not even skits, but just really short vignettes. This is not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, just the idea of we're in charge of a UHF channel and we need to come up with some shows to put on the air. Like they get about 40% of the jokes are the various shows that they create or ads that they do on the channel and all this sort of stuff.
Some of them were just names of shows. Although I got to say, like, I would watch the heck out of Name That Stain.
Right.
That is,
Underwater Chess for Teens.
Yes.
Yeah. There's some pretty good stuff in there. And loose plot synopsis because it's a loose plot.
Yeah.
George Newman he's a daydreamer. He's having trouble holding down a job, and his somewhat shisty uncle comes into a local UHF station, which for those of you not in the know about UHF, it was just a different band, kind of like FM, AM, although if you don't know about UHF, you probably don't know about AM, FM.
Yeah.
It was just a different band. Most of the major networks were on the VHF band, which was 1 through 12 or 13, and everything else was UHF. And the UHF channels sometimes were more difficult to get. They had shorter ranges. So they were very local, and the stations were usually small and underpowered.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of reruns of old shows from the 50s and 60s and a lot of very low budget, like some failed comedian who's hosting Uncle Bob's Treehouse and in the afternoons for kids, and he shows old Popeye cartoons and crap like that. I
think Wayne's World, like the show that is on the SNL sketch, that it's, that would have been a UHF.
That's UHF, but that's also public access.
Okay. Well,
I mean, they say at the beginning, Aurora Public Access.
Okay. Well,
which is different, but the same. Like most public access channels were UHF channels, but
tell me all about it, Dave.
Yeah. Well, not all UHF channels were public access channels, but all public access channels were UHF.
Well, if you have ever wondered, because there's some local channels, I think it's a lot of local Fox stations. They'll be like, Fox 32 on channel 12. And you're like, why is that? Well, that's why they would, for some reason, get the license under the UHF and then they would transition. I don't really understand
There's a very good reason for that. Fox was late to the game as a network. And by the time they were coming to the game, there were no VHF stations that were going to carry them. So when they had to get whatever they could get, and it always ended up being UHF stations. And so Fox's origins are on UHF, just like, when UPN was a thing, they were on UHF. Like there's just not a lot of space on the VHF band, and there's not a lot of stations that are powerful enough to broadcast it. So when Fox came into the game late after ABC, NBC, and CBS, they were only ever on UHF, and all of those stations still retain their old licenses for over-the-air broadcast. So in my area, it was Fox 48, and then it was Fox 45. It was Fox 45, then it was Fox 48, and then it was Fox 8. Mm-hmm. So eventually the and actually ABC switched to UHF. It was very weird. It was very weird in the area I grew up in. But
I gotta say, even though I grew up with this, now in the year of our Lord 2022, because it's a new year.
It is a new year.
The concept of channel or of stations having channel numbers is just wacky to me, because I haven't thought about turn to channel blah blah in forever.
And those channels literally translating to a wavelength that is being broadcast over the air. That's even weirder.
Essentially, I guess the modern translation is UHF is when it's a website that has to go by .net instead of .com. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yes.
Or it's a business that operates solely on a Facebook page, doesn't have its own website. Kind of little skeezy, little low rent.
Yeah, or used to just have a MySpace page, or just have some kind of generic storefront.
Yeah, they don't have an actual e-commerce website. You order everything through Instagram.
Or they just point you to their eBay store.
Yeah, little sketchy, but they have heart and integrity.
Yeah,
and they're not shysters like the network,
the big
guys.
Network guys.
Yeah,
yeah,
they care about the community. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So anyway, George gets put in charge of this UHF channel that his uncle wins in a poker game, and he just ends up kind of running it into the ground at first because he has no money. And
I think it was pretty well in the ground.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was pretty well in the ground. And one day he just happens to, he's having girl troubles, and he has his Uncle Bunky's treehouse. Nutsy. Uncle Nutsy, sure.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And his kids show that is a requirement on a UHF channel like that in the afternoons, so that, you can have a segue into cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And, he is depressed because his girlfriend left him, and he tells the janitor, Stanley Spadowski, played by Michael Richards, to go in.
Serious Kramer energy, by the way. You can see the roots of Kramer here.
Like 10 years pre-Kramer, or not 10 years, but many years pre-Kramer. But I mean, that's just kind of the stuff he did.
Yeah.
A lot of physical comedy. He tells him to go in, and he becomes a sensation, and everybody wants to watch him in this UHF channel, becomes more popular than the network.
I don't understand the appeal of Stanley, but
because he's genuine. And
sure. Sure. I feel like it's the same reason everyone loves Kevin Malone. They kind of suspect that he's, what's the phrase? From The Office. They kind of suspect that he's special needs.
Yeah. So anyway, they beat the local affiliate, the local network affiliate, Channel 8. And then the uncle gets in some money troubles with Big Louie, who has interchangeable hands and can change his hand into a cleaver for some reason to chop salami. And so the RJ Fletcher, who owns the local network affiliate, decides he's going to buy out this UHF pissant, and because he can't own two television channels because of the FCC regulations, he's just going to shut UHF 62 down and end all this competition.
Yeah. So he solves several problems at once, and the uncle is like, I don't really want to do it, but I need the money. And
the uncle doesn't really care until his wife cares, and then she basically makes them give George a chance, and George has a telethon fundraiser, and let's do the mega happy ending. Everything works out. They sell shares of the station, so now the community owns the station, and everything goes on, and Stanley gets a trophy, and
the mean guy gets his comeuppance, which was
multiple times, which is great.
That was very nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like, like a lot of these movies are just like, oh, he's ruined, but it's like, he loses getting the station, which is now, outperforming his station.
Right.
He loses his license because
from the
original station because he gets exposed. Multiple reasons, but he gets exposed by the tech genius that works at the UHF station that turns out to be an alien. He gets exposed in this monologue he was giving about the community and how they're all idiots, and he is glad they're stupid because he can feed them whatever they want. And yada, yada, yada. And the FCC takes away his license, and then some old lady knees him in the nuts. Mm-hmm. So it's just like one after the other.
And there's a, what do we call them now? A unhoused person.
Right.
Who is going around all the time, just as a background character, asking for
he starts out as a gag.
Change. Yeah. And you notice that George frequently gives him
very generously.
A little bit of,
the first time he comes up to George and he's like, "Hey, mister, you got change?" And George is like, holds out his hand, and the guy counts out $1 worth of coins and then gives him $1 in exchange for it.
I was like,
it's just a fun gag.
Yeah.
It's just a gag. And then later on, he asks Fletcher.
Yeah.
And Fletcher gives him one single penny.
Yeah. Thinking like, oh, I'm going to belittle this guy, blah, blah, blah. Turns out it was an extremely valuable penny. And at the end, he says, I cashed it in and I was able to buy enough shares in this TV station, which was sort of a last minute thing that put them over the top.
He puts them over there.
And then I got a fancy watch. It's a Rolex, which the guy had been throwing a hissy fit about before that he couldn't get a Rolex.
His son did get a Rolex.
That is like the coup de grace. And the guy just
and his son, his son is played by John Paragon, who also plays he's a normal regular, a regular on Pee-wee's Playhouse, and with Pee-wee he plays Jambi, Mecca Lecca High, Mecca Heine Ho. I had to say that to get you to remember who Jambi was.
Yeah.
He plays Jambi, but he also gets his comeuppance because he's like a smarmy, he's always like there in the background. He gets tripped by Billy Barty, who's in this movie, and gets his face in the mud. He had tripped Billy Barty, who's a cameraman earlier. Billy Barty, if you don't know, is a legendary little person actor.
I think he was on an episode of Little House on the Prairie. That's where I know him from.
He's just been a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And, died probably 20 years ago now, 10 years ago. I don't remember. But yeah, just amazing guy. He's in a ton of stuff. Master of the Universe, which we will watch at some point. Willow, which if you haven't seen that, we will watch that.
But it's been a while.
We may watch it anyway, just because I love Willow. Okay. So Billy Barty trips him because he, as revenge for the son, whose name I forget, having tripped Billy Barty's character, who is Hopper or Hooper or something earlier.
I don't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, and he gets his face in the mud. The John Paragon gets his face in the mud, which is great.
The Sun and kind of their whole news operation, I could see fitting in really well in Anchorman.
Oh yeah.
Where it was like the local news team war.
You hear a lot of people in comedy who do that sort of parody, over the top, funny stuff, referencing this movie. Like
really?
This is one of those movies that's like low key, super influential. Like at the beginning, he works at Burger World, and I'm pretty sure I heard a story that Mike Judge based the place where Beavis and Butthead work on the Burger World in this movie because he was a fan of UHF.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that some of that stuff is it made its way into Anchorman, and
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is, like I said, now that I recount it, this movie seems to have a very complex plot, but it's the kids got to do a fundraiser to save the youth center. Like we got to win the ski off. Like it's just the
mean old man is going to tear down our rec center. And,
right. It's a very basic plot, but it does go a lot of places. Yes. But the comment I made early on, and this will be probably the bulk of our conversation. This is a movie of gags. Mm-hmm. Like this is just two people sat down in a room and just wrote as many sight gags and as many just goofy things as they could. Yeah. Like the, you got change, mister? And then the guy literally making change for $1. It's just full of it. Couple of I got a ton of favorite gags. I'll say a couple, then maybe you can say one or two that you liked. Mm-hmm. I love the gag. I think it is underappreciated even amongst people who love this movie, where a guy comes in to the big network station to warn RJ Fletcher that U62 is on the rise, and he's wearing a audacious cowboy hat and he's got a mustache. And at the end of the whole thing, RJ Fletcher, who is played by Kevin McCarthy, who was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers and a ton of other roles, you'd probably know him if you've seen him, if you saw him, but you didn't seem to recognize him from anything, but he's been in a lot of stuff. He's got a huge, he's been acting since like the 50s or 60s.
I kept thinking he was Powers Booth. Even though he's definitely not. Like he looks like Powers Booth would today.
I think he died in 2010 and he was acting right up until, I think he had a movie released like in 2012.
Okay.
But he was acting right up to the end. He was born like 1914. He was like in his 70s in this movie. Mm-hmm. But just still going strong, and he would have another 20 plus years of a career after this, which just boggles the mind. But he comes in and Fletcher's giving this guy with the cowboy hat the business. And at the end he says, hey, take that ridiculous thing off. Because he turns around and the cowboy hat has a raccoon tail hanging off the back of it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's got jewels on top.
It's got a big,
everything.
jewel thing. And then the guy just looks real sad and then pulls his fake mustache off.
I did.
And
I did enjoy that.
That is just, and then some of my stuff is just the stuff that I have a friend who I watched this with in probably our early 20s. Like I think we'd both seen it when we were younger, and then I got the VHS or something. And it's just the little things, like there's the Wheel of Fish show. Mm-hmm. So after Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse, which is what the show ends up becoming when Stanley takes it over, after it becomes super, super popular, they come up with several other offbeat shows to fill the air. Cause now they've got all these eyes. So now they need to fill up a lot of original programming instead of just episodes of Gunsmoke and Little House on the Prairie and Mr. Ed and whatnot. And on the Find the Fish, the martial arts teacher who lives above George or beside George or whatever, he lives beside the studio or above the studio or whatever. His name's Kunai.
Getty Watanabe, by the way, otherwise known as Long Duck Dong.
Yes. Yeah. And he's in a ton of 80s movies, and he's, when you see him, he was one of the 2 or 3 go-to, like it depended. Did you need an older Asian actor? Did you need a younger Asian actor? Like, what did you need? Now
that I think of it, the thread of his career is he does not mind Asian jokes.
Yeah, he doesn't mind going, and maybe that was just the sort of thing. Like I need work. Yeah. And sometimes that's going to be me demeaning myself and my race, but a guy's got to work. Yeah. I don't know, but his catchphrase is so stupid. Yeah. And they do a thing like a it's not Price is Right. What's it called? Let's Make a Deal. They do a Let's Make a Deal thing where the lady spins the Wheel of Fish, which is literally a Wheel of Fortune style wheel that's up on the wall.
Actual fish.
With actual fish on it. And like their heads flop around as the wheel rolls. It's hilarious. Yeah. And she gets red snapper. Ooh, tasty fish. Red snapper. And he's like, okay, you can have the red snapper or you can go for what's in the box. And the guy comes down with the box and she's like, like they do on Let's Make a Deal. Right. She's like, I don't know what to do. And she picks the box and he lifts up the box and there's nothing in the box. Nothing.
No, you get nothing. You're so stupid.
You're so stupid. Yeah.
Which hasn't everybody wanted to say that to someone on a game show?
Yes, just so stupid. And red snapper, tasty fish. Like these are just things that we would say back and forth and just little gags. And then there's just a ton of like very time and place gags. What do you got? You got any gags that stood out for you?
Well, on the subject of Getty Watanabe and Asian jokes, there was a period where Stanley has been kidnapped by the Channel 8 goons
during the telethon because he's the guy everybody wants to see,
and they've got him at the station, and George and his crew realize this, and George goes over to rescue him, and he opens up the supply closet, and the martial arts teacher and all of his assistant teachers rush out and yell supplies, and I laughed and I felt really bad. I shouldn't laugh, but it was funny. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I feel like we need to insert the TikTok clip. It's a good joke. It's a good joke. Sorry. I'm gonna need you to stop.
Please stop it.
Yeah. That's a good joke. Anything else?
Oh gosh, there was a Conan the Librarian thing, which I liked, and I have to like. A patron says, where could I get books on whatever it was? Haven't you heard of the Dewey Decimal System? Which I imagine librarians think all the time. Yeah.
Like there's an intricate method of organizing books in this library.
But like it's on a poster. Yeah. We've got a thing where you can look it up.
Look at this card catalog. There's a couple good. Somebody returns a late book in that sketch, and he cuts them in twain with his giant broadsword.
I was like, ouch, that could have been me.
Yeah, you're definitely
all
habitual.
The time. Yes,
habitual.
I always joke, with my fines, you can build another wing of the library, and they don't think that's funny.
They're always sitting there going, do you know how many times this week I had to tell people the third book in the Twilight series was still checked out by you?
I didn't read the third book in the Twilight series.
Oh, you just skipped it.
I read it on a Kindle. So
you didn't check it. Oh,
I didn't.
You're not going to say you didn't read it. You didn't check it out from the library. Be more specific.
All the 11-year-olds, none of them had to wait for me.
Yes,
I was reading it on the
yeah, there's this movie is just full. Like, I heard you give a pretty good chuckle at the celebrity mud wrestling, where the celebrity guest is Mikhail Gorbachev.
Oh yeah.
There's a ton of gags that are just so like,
and a lot of them are just blink and you miss it.
Yeah, and they're so predictable.
Yes. Well, early in the movie, George is at his girlfriend's house and she's doing something and heating something in the microwave and then mashed potatoes. And I could see where it was going. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen. And it does. And it was no less funny because I knew like he's like sculpting it with his fork and says, oh, this means something, which I've never even seen.
Oh, you've never seen Close Encounters?
But I know that's what it is.
Well, yeah, so. that's in this. But then for like, I was going to say it's in the zeitgeist, but it's not for like a 20-year-old.
Right.
So that's that. Then when I say this is like one of the points I put on here is this is a very 1980s movie, which is to say it's also like late 70s. It's basically when Weird Al was a teenager / in his 20s, that all of the references are to that. And some of these things, the references, you couldn't, like if you offered me $1,000, I couldn't tell you where they originate.
Yeah.
Like there's the gag where they're showing the different shows, and one of them is a pet show, and the guy later on he's doing a pet, and he's got funny gags in there. Like he's got funny gags in there, like he's teaching poodles how to fly, and he's literally just throwing them out the window.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, I've heard that somewhere.
Poodles how to fly.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Is that off of WKRP?
I don't know.
I thought turkeys could fly.
That's not the direction I'm going.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm just saying, like that show, both of the guys who run the station, George and his friend Bob, are like, where did you find this guy? He's like, I didn't hire him. I thought you hired him. They both like neither one of them hired him, but here he is at the animal show. Yeah. And he shows this at turtles or nature suction cups. He licks the underside of one and throws it and sticks it to a ceiling.
The whole rest of that scene, I was waiting for it to just fall.
Right. Yeah. It
didn't.
But then they do a little insert joke with him where he's getting a shipment of animals for the next show.
Yeah.
And they're going like, we got gerbils, we got two aardvarks, we got 3 badgers.
As soon as they said badgers, I was like, oh, is this going to be what I think it is?
Yeah. He just stops and gives the guy a look. Badgers. We don't need no stinking badgers. I couldn't tell you what badges. We don't need no stinking badges. I don't know what movie that's from.
Isn't it 3? Is it 3 Amigos?
I don't.
Or
if it's in 3 Amigos, they're probably parodying.
Or is it Blazing Saddles?
It's also probably they're parodying. That's what I'm saying.
It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
There are certain lines and things that are so parodied. Say hello to my little friend, that sort of stuff. Like I know that's from Scarface, but that has been parodied in so many movies, so many times that there's a good chance that someone would not know the origin.
What is the
Like you say, like, oh, isn't that from 3 Amigos? Like maybe, but probably they're parodying that in 3 Amigos also. So there's a ton of stuff like that. Just a ton of these very topical 1980s. Yeah. The one. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna the villain, or one of the villains, Big Louie. You only ever see him from behind. He's in a big armchair, and you see his left arm, which is the one where it has different attachments and everything. And I was like, is this a James Bond thing? Because every time there's a villain with a quirk, it's always from Bond.
Right. Oh yeah. Like it's of course it's a James Bond thing, and then I also think is this an Inspector Gadget thing, which of course is a parody of James Bond and Secret Agents.
Yeah.
So
it's very twisted family tree.
Right. Does your mind first go to the parody, or like this is a Spinal Tap thing? Like, well, no, that's Spinal Tap parodying an actual thing that happened in music at some point.
It's similar to when you're learning about history and you learn, about Sarah Palin, say, and you think of Tina Fey. Right, and then you're like, oh, wait, no, she was the joke version. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And guarantee there's some news organization that has put a picture of
Tina Fey. 100%. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. So there's just a ton of that kind of stuff. There's a ton of references, like some deep-ish cuts, but also not necessarily deep for the time, but like so basically the way that Stanley becomes famous in this town and becomes beloved is that he gives a network style speech. He's talking about his mop. He's like, this is my mop, but it's pretty good, but it's not as good as my original mop. My friend George gave me this mop. And you got a mop, and sometimes the mop gets dirty. You got to get in there, and there's dirt on the floor. And you got to get a toothbrush, but you can't give up. You got to go over to the window and say, this floor is dirty as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Right.
Which is like, even at the time was like a pretty funny, I mean, everybody knew Network at the time.
Came out in 76, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, sometimes I wish for movies like this, or probably Wayne's World was the same, or maybe the Naked Gun ones. I want like an annotated version.
Right. Yeah. This is what we're referencing here.
If DVDs were still a thing, which I know they kind of are, but not nearly as much. Like I want the track where it'll be like, pause. Okay, let's explain this joke. Blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Speaking of that, the DVD commentary for this movie is great.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I found it on YouTube and I listened to a good portion of it. And Weird Al he has a shtick that he does throughout the whole thing where every time they switch locations, he'll go, and of course that's the back lot at 3764 True Highway 8 in, Pensacola, whatever. Yeah. He knows the exact address of every filming location. And like, as you're going through, every time they switch, like, oh, that was actually such and such's house. This is where they filmed that scene from other movie, and it's at 1234 South Main Street.
Yeah.
And he does this whole shtick throughout, but then he's saying things throughout the commentary, and without independent verification, there's no way to know any of it is true. Like saying things like, I think he said, I might be mixed up on this, but he said Crispin Glover read for this movie, and they wanted to read him for like a major part, but then when he read, the only part he wanted to read for was like the bum or something, or maybe John Paragon's character. I can't remember. Stuff like that. Just like, he just throws these things out there.
Okay, I feel like Crispin Glover in this movie would have been delightful.
Oh, sure.
Delightful. I see him as the friend. The Bob friend.
He could have did the Bob role pretty well.
100%.
Yeah, and then there are things that just you appreciate a lot more in the time. There's the Gandhi 2.
Yes.
Which was probably the one you laughed at the most.
That also, I felt really wrong laughing at that. But
in Gandhi 2, they turn him into an action star, and he's like ordering steak at a restaurant and firing off machine guns, and like, it's just that, like, he's tried pacifism.
Yeah. And
now
he looks pretty much like Ben Kingsley in Gandhi.
That's actually, if I'm not mistaken, that is actually the director, Jay Levy, playing that role.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, you couldn't go over every single reference. There's a ton of just little sight gags down to, he's in his apartment and he goes, what time is it? And a guy from the next door karate studio punches through the wall with a wristwatch on, and he checks the time on that guy's wristwatch, down to just over the top stuff where he's running to save Stanley, and he literally runs into a full-on Rambo 2 parody. Yeah. Where he does, and it's full of, and then that in and of itself is full of Rambo parodies where he's just firing off a machine gun and stuff's just blowing up like the Eiffel Tower. And and the beginning is like an Indiana Jones thing. Yeah, it's got an Indiana Jones. It's a lot. And there's just tons of like, he's the guy's like, oh, you can't go anymore. We're going to die. And the guy goes to leave the temple, and he gets run over by a train. Yeah. Just crazy stuff. It's similar to, I think I've told you this. I watched Spaceballs before I had seen any of the Star Wars movies, and I thought Spaceballs was funny on its own. And then, 20 years later, I finally start seeing Star Wars, and then I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I really get it. So this is the same kind of thing. Like, and I've got a lot more of these references than I did in Spaceballs. But if I watched Indiana Jones again, or Rambo or, any of these things, then I would be like, oh, this is even funnier than I thought. This is what they're, that kind of brings me around to one of the other things I wanted to talk about, which is this is the sort of parody movie that doesn't seem to really get made a lot anymore. Yeah. Like it does, but it doesn't get the same kind of treatment where it's actually done really well. Now somebody will do some dumb one-off parody movie, and they'll parody Twilight and Hunger Games and, just some dumb thing where they're parodying action movies in general, or, but you used to have stuff like Naked Gun or Hot Shots. Scary Movie is the other one that I listed, where it was kind of higher level stuff. Like it was well done.
Mm-hmm.
It was all dumb sight gags and absolute just like puns and just the stupidest humor, but treated with a certain amount of respect and done well.
It's got some polish to it.
Right.
Well, the Scary Movie crew, they've done a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, and most of those are the ones that I'm thinking about that kind of became garbagey.
Well, possibly, but yeah, they did one 50 Shades of Black, I think it's called, and something else, and so they've continued that. But
at a certain point, it became a conveyor belt, kind of like it did with Naked Gun, and then I think they cut that off. It was starting to become that with Hot Shots after I think the third movie, and they cut that off. I think it's a natural sort of thing to sort of cut that off because sometimes you just reach a point where you're telling the same jokes again, or it just doesn't work anymore. If you're trying to do Naked Gun where you're trying to bring the same characters back. Yeah. Naked Gun is a story unto itself that is also a parody of cop shows and detective shows and stuff. So it's kind of like they have their own characters. They have their own storylines.
I feel like after O.J. Simpson was a real life crime suspect, all the Naked Gun stuff was just we've jumped the shark. We cannot.
It became a little. No. Of course, my favorite one of all time out of this parodying a genre of movies is Not Another Teen Movie. Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah, just that is one of my favorite parody movies of all time. Right up there with this. This is definitely one of my favorite parody movies, and just because it is lampooning all this stuff that's very time and place. It's also just its entire concept is foreign to even like a 30-year-old today almost. Because even, when I was a kid, like cable TV was so prevalent. I know so much about UHF, VHF, all that kind of crap because of where we lived. We were stuck with that for so long, well into my teens. We never got cable down there. So I didn't really get regular cable until I'd moved out of the house.
I think the only reason that I understand the concept as well as I do, which is not to say that I understand it super well, but that I understand it at all, is the TV that we had, the small black and white TV that we had in our kitchen for the longest time was, I want to say it was from like the late 70s. I mean, it was super old and it had two dials.
Oh yeah.
One for the VHF channels 2 through 13, and then one for the other ones, and the other one didn't even work. So you could only get channels 2 through 13 in the kitchen. So you could get CBS through Fox, like all the networks basically, and PBS, which of course is really the only thing that was allowed in my house. But,
PBS.
But yeah, if not for that TV and the two dials, I would be like, wait, what?
And I think that's a lot of people's experience. Like if you're in your 30s and you know about having a dial television, it's because your second television in the upstairs bedroom or
your grandma's more likely.
Or you went to a relative's and they had it. For a lot of people, it stayed that way. And for a lot of people, you got cable, but you got it on one television because you needed a box. You get your cable box and
Come to think of it, we probably didn't have actual cable on that channel because I remember having to adjust. Like all we would do is like turn the dial that was on the outside of the dial to try to adjust when it got all staticky. So I guess that was over the air. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends. Like I never had a television with a fine tune like that, but we because we had antennas.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
UHF had its own separate antenna, which on most of the televisions that I had was always a circle.
Yeah.
It screwed into two screws. It had like little hooks that hooked around the screws. Then you screwed them down.
That little tiny TV you have that's from like
that I still have a TV.
That still has the circle.
It doesn't have manual dials, but it has. Television is from 1989, I want to say, and it has. It was purchased for me by my dad and stepmom to play my Atari 7800 on. Which the Atari 7800. So this is before 89. It's got to be like 86, maybe 87. I'm not sure when the Atari 7800 came out. Somewhere between 85 and 90. Wow. Definitely. But it has audio and video inputs, like the RCA ins that became kind of ubiquitous on televisions through the 90s. The white, yellow, red. Three cables that plugged in.
This all means nothing to me.
Okay, well, It was yellow yellow for video and white and red for audio.
Okay.
And I was just amazed by that television because it was replacing a black and white television with 2 dials.
Yeah.
And I still have it around to this day. It still works. Well, I know it worked as of a couple of years ago, last time I had it hooked up. But yeah, I need to pull it out. I mean, none of that over-the-air stuff really even works anymore.
Yeah.
Most of it's, if not all of it's, been decommissioned in favor of HD over-the-air stuff. But yes, that technology, like the stuff that's been just deemed made obsolete by the changes in technology when it comes to televisions, it's crazy.
Well, the idea that a TV from the late 80s would still work fine,
right?
Whereas probably our 2 TVs are from 2009, I think, and I feel lucky that they still work.
Like 4 years ago. 5 years ago, maybe. Oh yeah. We have one over 10-year-old television that still works very well.
Yeah, and I'm just like, how did we get so lucky? As opposed, modern stuff is
technology.
Crap. Hey kids, get off my lawn.
Yes, technology.
Anyway,
speaking of technology, at the UHF station, the guy in charge of technology is named Philo.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's Philo something. It's named after the guy who's credited with inventing television.
Oh, okay.
But yes, do you want to say who the actor is that was playing Philo?
Yes. So, and what makes it even better is at first I was like, is that yes? No, it's not. No, it's not. And I thought it was some other guy, and I went on a tangent and no, it is Luke from General Hospital.
Of Luke and Laura fame.
Yes. Anthony Geary is the actor's name, but
yes.
I thought it was some guy from 24, but it's not him. It's Luke, which is hilarious.
Yes, I was there for all of that Luke and Laura Returns stuff.
I think there were, I didn't pick up soap operas until I was probably 12 or 13.
Yeah, so. This would have been, I would be staying with my grandmother in the afternoon, and the way that the timing of getting out of school meant that General Hospital was always on when I got home from school. At her house, and she didn't have 2 televisions, so I watched this. So the whole return where they came back from, they were supposed to be dead, they were spies, and then they were supposed to be dead, and they came back, and there was a whole thing.
I started watching One Life to Live, and so General Hospital was kind of like, I'm still going to leave the TV on, after. So One Life to Live was first, and General Hospital was secondary. But I do remember Luke and Laura, and I knew that was a big deal.
Oh, such a big deal. Like that was such a, didn't care at all. Like basically I was just waiting my turn because when General Hospital went off, I got to control the television.
Yeah.
Didn't care, but had nothing better to do. So I sat there and watched the whole saga with the return of Luke and Laura and the whole deal.
I feel, so one of my first memories of One Life to Live, and I was probably 11 or 12 when I turned this on, was a main character had, I believe, been sexually assaulted, and her partner was trying to get her to have sex with him again.
Jeez.
And now that I think about it, holy smokes, that's inappropriate for 1 PM.
Yeah.
And for me at 11 or 12 or whatever it was.
Housewives.
Yeah.
Jeez.
My mother had no idea I was watching this.
Oh, scandalous.
I think she would have taken the TV from the house if she had known.
She would have broken off the switcher.
Yes.
On PBS so that you could never change the channel.
It's there. Yeah.
Break the dial.
1 channel.
You got to go get the pliers so you can change the channels.
Well, I was an industrious little kid, so I might have figured out how to do that.
I'm sure you would have.
But yeah, I can figure out lots of technical stuff. Fun fact, I reworked a phone jack in my room. It was this old-fashioned phone jack thing from, I don't know, the 50s or earlier, and I got a kit from the drugstore and reworked it so that I could have my own extension.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So
and then I got a phone from a yard sale that was really weird looking, but it was, I didn't have anyone to talk to on my extension.
Right, but you had.
But I did have.
You were ready to go. So
yes.
So your history of fixing things with a kit is it dates back to your childhood.
Yes.
Do you want to tell everybody about
your
because personal win?
Nobody's impressed. our dishwasher was not getting everything clean, and everything that I read said, okay, you need to clean the filter. Well, where's the filter in our dishwasher? Well, it's hidden beneath several layers of stuff, so you basically have to take it apart. And I found a tutorial on YouTube, and then I realized while I'm taking it apart, I can also replace this one arm, the spray arm, that part of it was melted or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it happened.
I don't know. I don't think it's ever worked since we moved in.
No. The top shelf that's supposed to where you put all the glasses
to spray up. So like nothing on the top shelf would ever get clean.
Yeah,
You'd open it and like there's little bits of grime inside all the coffee cups and all the stuff. So it took a while to get the part, and then I had to like psych myself up to do it. But I did it. I cleaned out the filter. It was disgusting. I don't know how we don't all have cholera from eating off dishes that came out of that thing, but it's all cleaned out. I cleaned the inside of the thing. I replaced the arm. All the dishes are beautiful. And my team meetings at work, we were all asked to share a personal win from the last week. And I told this, and my team just looked at me with blank faces.
None of these renting millennials were impressed.
I was like, listen, when you're in middle age, this is a big deal. And they were like, huh.
When you're in your 40s, this is going to be
this is the kind of thing that gets you excited.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you for letting me tell people about that because, well, I was telling my dad about that today, and I told him that my team was unimpressed. But then I was like, well, you're impressed, and I'm impressed, and Dave's impressed, and that's really all I need.
Yes, I'm very proud of you. You did a great job.
I'm proud of myself. And the fruit of my labor is that we get clean dishes now.
I know.
I take them out, and I'm like, oh, feel them. They're so clean. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Personal
all right.
win.
Back to
UHF. So yeah, speaking of personal win, no, that's not a segue that works.
It's not at all.
I got nothing to segue into. This movie, it's got a few actors in it that went on to bigger, better things. It's got Victoria Jackson in it, who is on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and now she's
probably a horrible person.
She's very conservative.
Okay,
so
I mean that
define horrible person.
It always seems that a lot of these people go south. Speaking of going south, Michael Richards.
Yeah,
I don't know what's up with him. Like he had that incident with the N-word,
and I feel like I just haven't
heard anything about him since,
which is fine with me because a little Kramer goes a long way.
Yeah, like I get the sense that he kind of got past it on some level with his career, but haven't seen him in anything since. I don't know if they're doing some kind of Seinfeld reunion. I don't know if they do it. I don't know.
Didn't he have a sitcom on NBC? It was like the Michael Richards Show or something.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And maybe that was before. I don't know.
I think it was before.
I feel like if I were his agent, I would be like, listen.
Yeah.
You're getting royalties and residuals and whatever, and just lay low.
Just lay low. You got that. Yeah. Come up with a pseudonym and write some, comedy novels or something.
Yeah. So also in this, Fran Drescher.
Yes. Plays the secretary.
Fairly low key.
Yeah.
She's not up at full nanny caffeination.
Yeah. Which, just more proof that as with so many people in Hollywood, these are characters.
Yeah.
Andy Kaufman, Michael Richards, Fran Drescher, like these are characters. These are not
this is
Richard
not what
Simmons.
They actually are like. Yes, there was a little bit of Fran Fine.
Oh yeah, for sure.
She wasn't talking at that. I can't even do it.
Yeah, it was just her regular kind of voice. Like she wasn't. She was playing a newscaster and had a nice enough newscaster voice. Yeah. For sort of that, like you'd expect her to be from Jersey or something.
Yeah.
But and like I said before, Billy Barty's in this.
Who was the guy who played the friend? Because I've seen him in some stuff. Was he in Revenge of the Nerds or something like that?
Possibly. He's been in a ton of stuff.
I've seen him in.
I don't know his name right off the top of my head. He's still working today. Like he's been in a ton of stuff. Just one of those solid character actors.
Yeah.
Like so many of these guys. The guy that plays George's uncle, just a super solid character actor that's been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Like whether or not you recognize him in this, you'll see him.
Yeah.
He's a bus driver in this, and he's a garbage man in that, and and he's a wealthy oil tycoon in this, or he's just one of those guys that's just.
So was this movie expected to launch Weird Al into some other stratosphere of fame, or was it just like, okay, we made a movie, that's done?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of like, you remember that there was that time in the 90s where Seinfeld hit, and then every comedian got a sitcom.
Yes.
They were just like, hey, Brett Butler,
Yeah.
Do you want a sitcom? Like, hey, Tim Allen, we got a sitcom for you.
Christopher Titus had a sitcom.
Right, exactly.
That's how bottom of the barrel they were going.
Like they were just throwing sick. And I think it was a similar kind of thing here with Pee-wee and Ernest movies hitting kind of big. They're like, oh no, funny character-driven comedian who's kind of like Pee-wee and has some parallels to Ernest, because a lot of Ernest's stuff was very sort of parody skit driven in his shows and stuff, and including in the movies. I think it was probably just that. It was probably just, hey, whatever, man. Like, this is something that sells. I mean, that's all Hollywood does, right? Oh, hey, here's a novel about a teen wizard. Well, here's a novel about a teen Greek god, and here's a novel about a teen vampire, and we're turning them all into movies, and here we go. Yeah. It's the same thing happens in publishing. Same thing happens in comic books. Just
here's
something hit.
Something about a teenager saving us all from dystopia.
Right. Well, like something wholly original hit, and people loved it because it was original. So let's stamp out as many variations of that as we can.
Yes.
Which, the original creators are usually guilty of it. The amount of spin-offs and things of your Harry's Potter and your, Mockingjay
your
birds.
Harry's Potter?
Harry's
What?
Potter.
Okay.
And your Katniss's Everdeen.
I would say that doesn't really work quite as well.
Yeah, sorry. But that
Bella's Swan.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bella's Swans.
Yeah.
Swan.
Well, Weird Al is, I would say, not superstardom, but he's reliable. So I don't think he is.
Like he's one of those guys that just like, if all evidence points to super good dude.
Yeah, he seems delightful.
No skeletons. Even this movie made at the height of time where casual racism was super okay. It's pretty light on that.
Aside from the supplies.
Right. The one Asian character is exploited to typical Asian humor. But yeah, otherwise it's got, it's a national, multi-race, it's a fairly unique cast,
could be worse.
Nobody makes a huge deal out of the Billy Barty being a little person, none of it's played, and even him being small isn't even really played for laughs. Like, it's played for sympathy at one point, but it's not even really played for laughs. Like, hey, it's just like, hey, he's a little guy, he's a cameraman. He's a little short cameraman.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of funny.
I feel like I have heard, by all reports, Weird Al is just delightful.
Totally.
A guy that I used to work with told me at great length, for some reason, about his experience going to a Weird Al concert with his wife, with the guy's wife, who was like 9 months pregnant at the time, and Weird Al sang a solo to her. My coworker was standing in the aisle of right by my desk telling this story at top volume with lots of hand motions and everything, and I'm just sitting there going, I just said hi. I don't know how we got to this.
I just said, how's your Monday?
Yeah.
And you were like, hey, 6 months ago, Weird Al sang.
I don't know how we got to this point. I'm glad you had a good time. Yeah. But wow, that was Yeah. But anyway, my old coworker really likes Weird Al. So
there you go.
There we go.
The old coworker seal of approval.
There we go. I want to know, listeners, is it those of you who have children between the ages of, I don't know, let's say 8 and 12, is it just a phase that they go through that they all discover Weird Al parodies and think they're hilarious and play them all, over and over and over top volume? Because my brother did that about that age, and our 11-year-old did that about that age. And at first I complained, and then somebody was like, well, what do you want him to listen to instead? And I was like, oh, no, this is pretty wholesome. This is fine.
Because Weird Al has either advertently or inadvertently spawned a whole genre of parody artists on YouTube who are very much not good musicians,
right?
But can get a sequencer and make a beat And, everything I've ever seen is like Weird Al is actually musically talented.
Yeah.
Plays the hell out of a accordion.
Yeah. You may not like the polka, but he's good at it.
Advertently. So I'd much rather him be listening to Weird Al than another Minecraft parody song, which is that some guy made in his
where
basement.
he's ended. Come to think of it, we need to push the Weird Al.
Yes,
again. That's better.
More.
Well, my favorite thing about Weird Al is that he gave me a version of a song based on Blurred Lines. Robin Thicke is apparently a terrible person, and Blurred Lines is not a good theme, but it's got a great beat, and so I listened to Word Crimes, the Weird Al version instead, which is great on its own. Never mind that it's all about grammar and usage and everything.
Very
and so
on brand.
Yes,
for you. So. Yeah. I think that is the one thing that is kind of surprising about this movie. There's only one Weird Al parody song in it.
Yeah,
and it's just for a dream sequence. And it's a parody of the Dire Straits' Money for Nothing
all
video.
All about the Beverly Hillbillies.
But it's the Beverly Hillbillies.
Sort of an odd, like, how do they match those up? I don't really understand.
Apparently he wanted to do it about a Prince song, but one rule Weird Al has is he will only parody someone's song if they give him permission.
And I think Prince was very sensitive to his trademarks.
He actually said that one of the believable things from the audio commentary that for whatever reason Prince was never a fan, never really agreed to any parodies, and he's not going to do it now, I guess. There's only one, and it's a good parody of that 80s computer graphics, and just the Beverly Hillbillies. It's great, but a little oddly restrained for a guy who was literally only known for that.
Well, and there were lots of dream sequences too, or like fantasy sequences or whatever they were, and so you would think that they would take advantage of that.
And I think they smartly did that they did that for the Rambo parody, they did that for the Indiana Jones parody. Like smartly they used that to do film parodies, since he was working in the medium of film. So, and even they even tie into the Beverly Hillbillies one because he's watching it as he goes to sleep. As he nods off while he's working. And it's top to bottom. It's a extremely wholesome. Like there's not really anything.
I don't think there's any. Is there any sex? I don't.
No, not that I even recall.
No,
certainly. I mean, he's not even really like he is.
He's rather chaste with his
relationship with his girlfriend is like Pee Wee and Dottie. Like it's not quite as ew girls, but it's like it's that sort of surfer, like their boyfriend girlfriend, but that's it. Like that's as much as you ever see. Like he misses going to a fancy dinner because he works late. But that's as close as it ever comes to romance.
There's a lot of explosions, but they're very over the top and silly. Well, and one other thing that this has in common with Pee Wee, a terrifying transformation. Executed, funnily enough, by the same team that did Large Marge. I believe it now that you mention it.
So Luke, Philo, who is their tech guy, and he helps them do all sorts of things like spy on Channel 8 and breaks into the signal of Channel 8 with his technologies, and at the end is just like I'd have to check the dates, but I'm almost positive this would predate Poochie from The Simpsons, where the way they write that character off on The Simpsons. So if you've never heard of Poochie, which you're looking at me like you haven't.
No.
Have you heard of Itchy and Scratchy?
Yes.
Itchy and Scratchy's their in-universe.
Yes.
The Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
And they put a new hip character on named Poochie, and he's a skateboarding dog. And he's voiced through a comedy of errors. He ends up being voiced by Homer.
Okay.
And Homer gets a big head about it because Poochie becomes popular. And then they write Poochie off by having Poochie just say, my work here is done. I must go back to my home planet. And then they just literally take like the single cell of the animation of Poochie, and he doesn't move at all, and they just move it up the screen like he's going off into space. And I'm pretty sure that happened after 1989, but that's what Philo does. He's like, at the end, after they win the station, he's like, all right, my work on this planet is done. I'm going back home. And he walks over.
There's been no indication up to this that he's anything but a weird guy.
Yeah, he's weird. But that's it. Yeah, he walks over into a field and he does a Large Marge-esque transformation into his alien form, and then just goes back to his home planet.
Well, and then there's some indication. So earlier, what's his name? I can't remember. McCarthy, McGrady, whatever. The Channel 8 guy.
RJ Fletcher.
Yeah. Is broadcasting to, he's going to say something bad about the U-62 crew, whatever.
Yeah.
Philo has footage of him in his office saying bad things about
the community,
whatever.
Yeah.
And he overrides the signal, so he shows that instead. And it didn't really explain it, but then later I think it was some of his alien magic is what did it. Because he like presses some button and there's this like weird blue light.
Yeah, he's got like this thing that's like signal override and he like clicks it.
Yeah, and they don't really explain it, but then at the end the same blue light is what levitates him.
Yeah,
so it was some
very possible
stuff.
Although that was a thing. Like do you hear about the Mad Max the Max Headroom takeover thing?
No.
There was a channel, I want to say like in Kansas or something, and more than once someone in a Mad Max mask, like a plastic, like a rubber Mad Max Headroom. Remember Max Headroom?
Yes. I mean,
from Pepsi
vaguely.
commercials?
Yes.
In a Max Headroom.
Pepsi.
Right. In a Max Headroom mask, broke into the signal and just like talked and kind of danced around, but broke into the signal of his channel and like hijacked it multiple times. So, that stuff was happening in the 80s and, could have even, were they referencing that? I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, like someone hijacking a signal from a television station, not an unheard of thing at that time. So, but I can't think of anything else really to talk about other than like, hey, you should watch this movie. It's funny. It's not ever life-changing, laugh out loud, extreme guffaw. Like it is just yeah.
I would say it takes a while to get going. I would say
it starts with a big parody and then you got to get into the story and everything.
I would say it was at least a third, maybe halfway through before I was like, okay, I'm
on board. Yeah,
I stopped having to get up to use the bathroom after a while. But
it's just are you giving it a recommendation?
Sure.
Enthusiastic, sure. From Marian. Yeah, watch it if you haven't seen it. It's funny. It's available, everywhere. And
I would say if you were born after, I don't know, 1985, have Wikipedia handy because some of the jokes are just going to be.
I think you will enjoy the goofy humor, the supplies, but nobody, the Wheel of Fish, the Stanley Spadowski.
Enjoy the supplies joke. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I laughed at it.
All right. Well, as punishment, you're going to have to drink from the fire hose.
Yeah, I know.
You found the marble in the oatmeal.
Oh, yeah. That was like, what?
Yeah. But that's exactly like, that is just such a great encapsulation of what kids shows look like to parents. Like when Stanley gets his show in full swing, he comes out driving on a miniature fire truck or miniature wrecker, I can't remember which, and he's got like a aviator hat on with like goggles, and he's driving around the studio just yelling, and he's got these Richards, he wears these buck teeth in the whole thing, and and this is another one of those things that in the commentary you can never tell if Weird Al's telling the truth or not. When he's talking about Spadowski, he goes, Michael Richards, he came in for the audition for Stanley Spadowski wearing those teeth. He had them custom made by a dentist in London. That could very well be true, but also could be completely fabricated. But anyway, he's got these buck teeth and he's just running around acting crazy. And then an alarm goes off, like a siren goes off, and he goes over to this kiddie pool full of oatmeal, and there's like two older people and a kid in it.
Yeah, and they're like kneeling in it.
Sitting waist deep in like oatmeal, and the kid has the marble.
Well, what was funny? So I grew up near Chicago, not in Chicago, I must confess, but near it. And Chicago is where the Bozo Show was. Yeah, taped.
So I know all about.
And
Bozo.
that was a rite of passage. Well, not a rite of passage. Many kids in my class would skip a day of school because they got to go to a Bozo Show taping. We didn't even watch the Bozo Show at my house. I mean, I knew it was.
I watched the Bozo Show.
I knew it existed, but it was not something that was going to be encouraged in my house. And I don't know. And certainly we were never going to go. But Yeah, that's been around forever. And I think that started out as like this level of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that. Like, how did the Bozo Show start? Because now it's everybody our age knows the grand prize game. And it got a little slicker as it got bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
But when WGN was just a local station, I'm sure it was.
What were the cookies they were always playing for?
It
was always like, tell them what they're going to win, cookie. And it was always like some kind of confection from some company. I don't
remember.
I'll have to look it up after.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the one thing that Spadowski does really great is it's encompassing what it like the fever dream that these shows look like to parents, but the kids are just like 100% on board with it.
That's true.
They're just
true.
And he takes this kid over on a horse to the fire hose, and he just opens it up and it just shoots the kid off and he flies 10 feet or whatever. It's a great gag. That's the kind of stuff that anybody will laugh at. Maybe you don't understand, you don't get who Mikhail Gorbachev is, but you'll laugh at throwing poodles out the window and maybe you don't get the badgers joke, but you'll laugh at sticking turtles to the ceiling and all that stuff. Like for everything you won't get, there's something that is original.
Yes.
That's actually,
if you're 10 and haven't seen Star Wars, you can still watch Spaceballs.
You can still watch Spaceballs.
And it'll be funny.
And that's actually one of the things that I think Weird Al doesn't get enough credit for, because in this movie, I think the parody stuff lands really well, but the original comedy also lands. And Weird Al, I think, doesn't get enough credit for his ability to write original songs either. Some of his songs, like Dare to Be Stupid is one that I really like, that's from his earlier work. And then a lot of his polkas and stuff on his later albums. Yeah, but like he's super talented musician. A lot of his songs really his original songs really work well. Just like I think a lot of the original comedy lands in this. It's not all parodies. Like just like you said, it's you're not going to get the Star Wars references, but a lot of the stuff's going to be funny anyway. In Spaceballs, same thing here. Yeah, same thing. So yeah, I think that's UHF.
I think it is. I think that's UHF. We would love to know what you think about UHF. Are you someone born after 85 and you're all indignant? Like, I got all the jokes. I can explain some of them to you. Well, please let us know. Yeah. Also, if you are a middle-aged homeowner and you understand the joy of cleaning out a complicated dishwasher filter, please send us an email or tweet at us. We would love to know.
Any major home repair that you do on your own.
Did you install a phone jack in your room when you were 12? We would love to celebrate you for that. So whatever's on your mind, drop us a line. You can tweet at us or you can send us an email. Our handle is the same for both. It's YSMY Podcast, YSMY for You Show Me Yours at Twitter or at gmail.com. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening to this, 2 weeks from today, there'll be something new. You can get our new episodes on most of your major podcast providers, specifically Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, we would love it if you would rate, review, and subscribe, which makes us feel happy. And also it boosts us up so more people hear about us. You can also just, tell your friends. So retweet our tweets of new episodes.
Yes, somebody's got to retweet it besides me just retweeting.
Right. I mean, because if you guys don't, he's going to make me retweet it, and I don't like Twitter, so don't make me do that. Show your love by retweeting our episode tweets. And speaking of, in 2 weeks I'm hosting, and I don't know what we're gonna watch. I'm sorry.
Classic Marian surprise.
I was focused on the dishwasher. And I forgot. We're going to watch the tutorial that taught me how to clean the filter.
Yeesh.
Seriously, that guy is a mensch. Bless him for making a good tutorial. Like, no, we're gonna figure out something better. I don't know what it is. It'll be fun. I'm just babbling now because you got me all excited about the dishwasher. So I'm very excited. I'm gonna go run some dishes and marvel at how clean they are. So anyway, we'll see you in 2 weeks. It'll be a surprise what we're watching, but we'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.
You got to remind me that I need to pick something ahead of time.
Why do I have to remind you of that?
Because
it happens every time.
Not every time, every other time.
Sure. But if you're prepared to do it every time, then you'll always be prepared.
Yeah.